organization, but while the Bureau declared themselves a small venture, he'd shown approval at their mission to advance the understanding of the deaf in the United States. As a farmer who kept a vast acreage of orchard land, Thor had little time for a day away, but he'd made an exception, expressing to Aven that if his involvement could help others understand his kind better, he would go. If it could benefit future generations of deaf children to be less misunderstood, perhaps their own son or daughter included, he would commit to the procedure. A noble choice, since neither Thor nor Aven had been certain how blood was drawn. She had heard of bloodletting before, of a physician making an incision in a patient's vein. Might the process be similar? Thor had concurred, and the summons declared the research a most promising endeavor. For that, he had been willing to brave even this unknown. Participation also offered a small cash compensation for travel, and while the $3 was generous, Thor would have come regardless. After stepping down the narrow hallway of the passenger car, they were led to a private compartment where a makeshift office boasted organized chaos. 2 cushioned benches faced one another in snug fashion, with a medic chest resting on the far end of one. Beside it sat a lap desk that lay flung open to reveal papers, some of which were piled across the seat. Just beneath the window overlooking winter brown hills hung a small table folded down from the wall and braced level with a bracket beneath. The narrow surface supported a basin of water and folded towel. Just below stood an icebox of polished oak.
"Do come in, please."
The doctor motioned for them to be seated. "Thank you, sir," Aven said as Thor moved to the bench opposite the cluttered one. Thor waited for her to sit, then took the place beside her. His grip on her hand never wavered. If she wasn't mistaken, it grew firmer, strong and strapping. Thor kept 2 knives on him at all times and could land a stag from 400 yards with a rifle. He'd survived ruthless fistfights and even endured a marginal stabbing. But the process of his blood being offered up had him tenser than the springs of the cushioned bench beneath them. Though nervous herself, Aven gave his fingers a squeeze of comfort.
"I understand this is rather unusual."
Dr. Kent rummaged through his wares.
"But due to the nature of the study and the varied locations of the participants, I find it easiest to conduct the interview here, as opposed to setting up an office in each town visited."
Accustomed to speaking on Thor's behalf with strangers, Aven looked to her husband, and sensing his lack of concern, offered such assurance to the doctor. "'Tis just fine here, thank you." The doctor handed over an envelope with the payment. Thor pressed it into his shirt pocket, followed by the folded letter from the Bureau. Medical tools glinted in the late afternoon light when Dr. Kent opened a drawer.
"There are several other physicians assisting with the program across the East. I am overseeing the regions of Tennessee, Virginia, and most of Kentucky. Your participation in the study, Mr. Norgaard, is most appreciated."
Thor's brown eyes didn't waver from the man's face as he spoke.
"First, we'll begin the interview, then proceed from there."
He lifted a blank form from a satchel. Thor's name was already written on top, along with the location of their farm in Botetourt County. A fountain pen was uncapped, and the date added to the top of the paper. The doctor signed his name at the bottom, then touched the pen tip beside the first question.
"Tell me, Mr. Norgaard, were either of your parents deaf?"
Thor shook his head.
"What is your nationality of origin?"
Thor's hand moved in a blur as he fingerspelled the answer. Norwegian.
"Forgive me, I'm not well trained with sign language. If you'll do that again slowly."
Thor formed the answer once more, this time molding each letter with his hand in unhurried procession. Pen scraped against paper. Norwegian.
"Here I'd assumed you Irish as your wife, if that is indeed what I caught in her voice."
His smile was amiable as he added to Thor.
"Have you had any success with speech?"
Thor shook his head, and the doctor marked a box on the form beside oral failure. Aven pursed her lips to keep from chiming in. While the few verbalizations her husband managed wouldn't be heard as words by others, they were most precious to her, especially the brief hint of her name that he attempted at times. Deep and husky from his lips, it always made her warm all over, and awed by the fortitude of this man whom God had blessed her with.